there's a line that you have in one of your books, and I wrote it down. It said, the only way to start a sales conversation with these high-value prospects is to interrupt them. And then you go on to talk about, high-value prospects versus low-value prospects. And I wrote in the margin, anybody worth working with is worth interrupting. And, I can see the cynic rolling their eyes. Oh, yeah, it's so easy for you, Scott, and you, Jeb, you're sitting there, you're giving us advice. You're not the one that has to go knock on doors and get shit on because we're interrupting people at dinner. And you're not the person that has to call the top producing realtor who's gotten 500 calls today. Because I can tell you from the mortgage side, directly to your point, any realtor worth working with is worth interrupting. The realtor who's calling me to say, hey, can we get together for coffee? I know what this is. You want me to spend $1,000 on your Zillow lead spend, and you haven't closed a deal in 3 months, right? Like, I already know this. The ones that are interrupting me, I don't want to work with, and the ones who I want to work with, I need to interrupt. So can you talk a little bit about either the habits or the mindset or the mental commitment that it's going to take for those people who do want to survive? Because it is hard walking the neighborhood, knocking on doors when you get 9 out of 10 slammed in your face, and the 3 out of 30 that do answer, 2 of them tell you to piss off or in the middle of dinner. How do you keep the mental focus and the good habits to get to that 30th person who's going to turn into a deal?
I always hate it when, doing a podcast, like the Sales Gravy podcast, and the person I'm interviewing turns around and starts interviewing me, but I'm just going to do this to you.
Perfect.
How did you get me on this podcast?
Well, it's funny. I asked a friend of a friend to vouch for me so we could become Facebook friends a couple years ago. Then I stayed in touch with you, commented on a bunch of your stuff. And then as soon as I saw you had a new book coming out, I was like, I know authors, even millionaire authors, all they give a shit about when they have a book coming out is promoting their book. So I immediately emailed you and I was like, hey man, here's what we can do for you. Here's the value we can add with promoting your book. Could I get 45 minutes of your time for a podcast?
You interrupted me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think while I was shaving, I got interrupted, right? So, and here's the truth, okay? The Facebook side of things, I don't really. I mean, I think that it seemed vaguely familiar, but it's like I don't spend that much time on Facebook. I typically just post things every once in a while, and I'm off. So even though that may have had some sort of subtle psychological thing, what you really did was you interrupted me with the right timing, because the thing is that, like you were talking about the people that interrupt me, every week we get 20 requests to be on podcasts. And what's so funny is, there's all of these poor people that are running around with their PR people, begging to get on my podcast, which is almost impossible. But people beg me to be on their podcast. That's a really good, it's an honor, and it's flattering, and it's wonderful. But I don't have any time. I'm literally, if I was on everybody's podcast, I wouldn't sleep. And I figured out, a long time ago that if I don't take care of myself, I'm no good for anybody.
Right.
So it's really rare. I think I've been on 3 podcasts this year. I've gone on and joined someone on their podcast, and maybe 4, but it hasn't been that many. And I've got a cadre of gatekeepers who are really good at making people feel good, but I'm not going to be on your podcast. But thank you. And every once in a while, I'll say yes to somebody, and end up, and there's some teenager, and I'm in their basement, and there's one person listening to their podcast. But what you did was you took a shot, and you sent me an email, and you could have called, but you sent an email. You got the timing just spectacularly right. So you're exactly right. I got a new book coming out. What do authors want to do? They want to promote their book.
100%.
And in this particular book, I'm so fired up over it. You probably tell by my tone of voice. I'm cranked up over this book. I think it's going to be just the book that everybody needs to read. I love the book. And you caught me on a morning where I was looking at my email at just the right time. And I get 1,000 emails a day. I saw it. I sent you a note. And then I did to you, my little test to you is, can you be flexible? Because if I want to be on somebody's podcast, if they can be flexible, then I can make it, because they can work it around my schedule. They go, no, here's my calendar link. It has to be at this time. I'm like, that's just not going to work for me, because I'm gonna commit to a time, and then someone wants to pay me for my time, and I'm ditching you for money.
Absolutely,
which is never a nice thing. So if you just think about what you did, all you did was interrupt me. Now, you said before we came on, and I know that you're pumping me up and you're saying nice things to me. But you're like, oh, I'm a fanboy. I love this book, Fanatical Prospecting, and you showed me all the writing down there. But let's just say that that's true. And I'm on the other side. I had approached John Gordon to ask John Gordon to do something for me, and I'm fanboy to John Gordon, so I'm nervous reaching out to John Gordon. We have the same publisher, and like my editor is his editor, so it's not like we're that far removed from each other. And my heart's beating just a little bit, reaching out to him to ask him for a favor. So I know that that's a little bit intimidating and nervous. And like, what if he says no and you're putting it out there? And, I could have sent you back a note and said, schmuck, I'm not going to be on your podcast. I'm too big for that. I'm a big old author. I could have done those things to you. But you didn't think about that. You just thought, I'm going to get the timing right. I want this guy on my podcast. This is what I'm going to do. And you interrupted me. And you got me. And I swear to you, when I say this number, at least 500 other podcasts did not. Because either they got the timing wrong, or they gave up on the first try, or they did that little thing. Here's my calendar link. Sign up for a time that works for you. Whatever those things were, they did those. You sent me a personalized letter, a note that was not contrived, that was genuine, and it was value based. Like here are things I can do for you, which was really nice. It didn't have a stupid Calendly link on it, and it was just the biggest turnoff for me personally. And I was like, I like this guy. Like, I just like the letter. And I said, you can be flexible. And you said, yep, no problem. I can take care of that. And then I was like, all right, we can make this happen. That's the art of interrupting.